Hi everyone and welcome to Book Boop. My name is Rachel and today I'm going to be doing my August wrap up. So that means I'm going to be talking about all the books that I read in the month of August. Like all the other months in 2019, I had a theme for my TBR and that theme was paranormal, which is one of my favorite genres to read. I absolutely love anything ghosty, like ghost story type stuff. Love it. So there are 4 different books that I read in the month of August. I'm going to be as spoiler free as I possibly can while I'm reading these or telling you about them. And a few of them I borrowed from the library, so I won't be able to hold them up for you, but I'll let you know which ones those are. And like I do in all my wrap ups, I'll also be looking at notes as well. So I apologize if I'm looking off screen a little bit, but that just helps me keep on track and make sure I don't ramble. So let's go ahead and jump into the books that I read in August. So the very first one I read was called The Crossroads, and it's by Chris Grabenstein. This is a middle grade ghost story book. This story is all about this crossroads in this small town where a lot of bad things have happened over the years, lots of accidents and things. There's just a lot of darkness around this crossroads, and specifically there's this old, large, gnarly tree that has a very benevolent spirit that's trapped inside it that's connected to the crossroads. This story jumps back and forth between a family that has just moved into a house where this tree is on their land, and it jumps back to the past as well, kind of going back to some of the traumatic things that have happened specifically at this crossroads that's connected to this tree. So it's a very creepy story. I had so much fun with it. So here are some of my thoughts on it. It's a very, very creepy read, which I appreciated so much. I will say the first few chapters, they felt a bit choppy while introducing the characters and introducing the story, but after a while that quickly smoothed out and it flowed well. So at first it was a little choppy, just kind of figuring out what's going on and all that kind of stuff, but then it really started to flow well within the story. I loved the mystery of this book. There was a lot of mystery of trying to jump back and forth between timelines and trying to figure out what's going on, what's the mystery behind this crossroads. I loved getting to piece that together and kind of go along in the mystery and jumping back and forth. And figuring out the motivation between the characters, especially this benevolent spirit. Why was this spirit so evil? What's going on with it? Just figuring out all the past stuff with this was really, really cool. I enjoyed that a lot. The main villain in this story is absolutely terrifying and not easily defeated, which I loved. A lot of times, especially when I read middle grade stories that are kind of ghost stories or have some kind of villain or something, a lot of times the villain is usually easily defeated, or it's you defeat it and that's it. And in this one, the villain was just much more difficult to handle and was more terrifying, and I just really enjoyed that. It made it pretty scary. Overall, this was a lot of fun, and I really want to add this one to my collection. I really want to purchase this book and add it because I would love to read it again, and I like to have it within kind of my ghost story paranormal collection. I think that'd be so cool. And I also really want to read the rest of kind of the haunted mysteries within this series. I think it's a series that Chris Grabenstein has read. I don't think the books are necessarily connected, but they're different kind of ghost story mysteries. So I really want to read some more of his work because I really, really enjoyed The Crossroads. It was so much fun, and I wish I hadn't waited so long to read it. I've had that on my Goodreads TBR forever. So that one was fun. I gave that one 5 stars. I loved it. It was so much fun. And yeah, it was a great creepy read. No complaints, really. Okay, so the next 3 books I'm going to talk about are a series, at least as it stands at the moment, and that is the Diviner series by Libba Bray. I've been wanting to read the series for a really long time, and when I say as it is, it's because there are 3 books out now, and there's a 4th one, which I think is the last book that's coming out towards the beginning of 2020. So I really wanted to jump into these and get caught up in the series before the new book comes out so I can kind of join in the excitement with that. And I've heard nothing but good things about the Diviner series. So I was very excited to jump in. I also got to read the very first book, The Diviners, with my friend Kaylin over at Kaylin Abridge. It was kind of my very first buddy read, so that was a lot of fun as well. I will link her channel down below. But the first book, let's talk about The Diviners by Libba Bray. If you've never heard about The Diviners before, it is set in 1920s in New York. We follow this main character named Evie, and she goes to live with her uncle in New York, kind of as she gets in trouble in her hometown and her parents send her away to her uncle to kind of pay for her sins kind of thing. Her uncle owns the Museum of the Creepy Crawlies. That is what the locals like to call it. It's this museum that he owns that has a whole bunch of paranormal related memorabilia there. And while Evie is there staying with her uncle, there's some of these awful murders that start happening within New York that are all connected, which they think is probably a serial killer. But the serial killer has very paranormal aspects to the murders. And so the police actually ask Evie's uncle to start helping to try to figure out what's going on to see if they can track down this murderer, and Evie ends up getting involved in it as well. There's also a thing with characters who have different gifts or abilities, kind of like paranormal abilities and stuff like that. So it's a very fun read. It was supposed to be really, really, really creepy. That's the main thing I've heard over and over about this story, is that it's really creepy. Also, I apologize if you can hear like a smacking sound. That's my dog. He's like laying right here next to me, licking constantly. Please stop, Moon, please. Anyways, so sorry about that. So the Diviners, let's talk about this. It has a very creepy story concept. And I loved the 1920s New York setting. There was a lot of 1920s slang thrown in here. I loved the vibe of this book and just being in the 1920s, which also, this may make me sound really dumb, but it blew my mind thinking about the fact that the 1920s is basically 100 years ago, which is weird to think about because I didn't think about the fact it was 100 years ago. That's nuts. So it was really cool kind of being in the roaring 20s in New York, the glitz and glamour of Hollywood, and kind of like the showgirl thing, and also the popularity of diviners, the popularity of the paranormal, and, you know, the what are they called? You know, the Ouija boards, that kind of thing, like just that kind of stuff, kind of that time period. It was just really cool to be within that time period. There are several characters to follow within this story, which sometimes I had trouble keeping track of. I'm also really bad with names. I'm horrible with remembering character names, and because of that, I usually tend to get a little bit lost when there's a lot of characters. So for me, I had a little trouble keeping up with the different characters, but they were all good. They were all great characters, and I liked them a lot. I just personally had a little bit of trouble keeping up with all the different characters. I will say that to me, this story had a little bit of a slow start, but the second half of the book was paced quite well. The level of creepiness that I had heard about, the hype behind this book, it actually did not hit the level of creepiness that I was expecting, which for me was a little bit disappointing. I heard over and over about how this book is so creepy, and it just, you know, don't read this at night by yourself, you know, that kind of thing. And not that I'm not saying it isn't creepy. It is. It just didn't hit the level of hype of creepiness as I was expecting. So I think I let the hype get to me a little bit with that. I absolutely loved the ending in this book because it was not abrupt. A lot of times in these stories, I don't like it when it kind of, you kind of work towards this main climax in the story, and then you hit it and it drops off in the bookends, and it just feels really abrupt. This one did not have that, which I really loved. I love the fact that it kind of hit the main climax of what this book was working towards. And then after that, it did a great job of setting up the next book. There were still plenty of chapters after kind of like the main thing, kind of like the main thing we're heading towards. I loved that. I love that there were still several chapters left to kind of wrap up what had happened to move towards the next book. I absolutely loved that. I thought that was great. So I'm glad that it didn't just chop off at the end. I appreciated that very much. So I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars. I didn't end up enjoying it quite as much as I was hoping I would. I still really enjoyed it a lot. It was still really cool. There was just some parts that were a little slow to me. It didn't quite hit the creep level that I was expecting, but I thought it was really neat. And also, I personally really love this edition. I think the cover is so beautiful. There have been so many different covers for this series, and almost none of them match. But I'm trying to collect the paperback ones with these covers because at least they'll all match. But I really like this style. I think it's really cool. So, all right, let's get to the next one. So the second book in the series is Lair of Dreams, also by Liv Bray, of course. I'm not going to give a synopsis for this one because I feel like it'd be too spoilery, but I gave you the synopsis for Diviners. So just kind of keep that synopsis in your head for the rest of the series. So Lair of Dreams, second one, it is a beast. It's a big one. I really enjoyed the overall story in this one, and honestly, I enjoyed this one more than the Diviners, to be perfectly honest. It felt creepier than the Diviners did, and I felt more invested in the story. I felt like kind of the overall overarching story and mystery in this one, it just intrigued me more. I just thought it was more exciting. I felt like it was more creepy. I just really enjoyed this a lot. I thought there was some great character development in this, and it focused slightly more on some other characters, which I thought was really cool, because in the first book it focused mainly on Evie, and of course it had a lot of other characters surrounding that as well. But I love the fact that a lot of the characters that we see, the characters we see in the first book are still in here, but it shifts focus, which I liked. We got to learn more about some of the characters that we didn't learn as much about in the first book, which I thought was really neat. And I got to see a lot of character development for everybody, which was cool. I love to see characters that don't stay stagnant and they end up just developing. And I think that's really cool, and just learning more backstories about these different characters. So that was really neat. I did feel like this book was a little bit larger, a little bit longer than it needed to be. I felt like there was some parts in here that lagged a little bit. I felt like there's maybe chunks that probably could have taken it out to make it even more fast paced, because it did tend to lag in the middle a little bit. So I felt like it was a little bit too beefy. It didn't need to be this beefy, but it was still really good. It didn't hinder my enjoyment of it necessarily. I would love to see this one adapted for screen. Oh my goodness. Just the creepiness in this, the creatures that we kind of get to see, it's, I don't know, I would love to see this on film. I think it'd be really cool. I got a lot of really cool mental images while I was reading this one, and I would love to see this one on screen. I just think this one would be amazing, just standalone movie or TV show or something. It was good. So this one I gave 4.5 out of 5 stars. I enjoyed it a little bit more than Diviners, and this one was a lot of fun, and yeah, this was great. So the very last one is called Before the Devil Breaks You, and this one I borrowed from the library, so I can't hold it up for you right now. It probably has the creepiest looking cover of the series so far. It's pretty creepy looking. So look it up. It's terrifying. So again, Before the Devil Breaks You, I'm not going to give you a synopsis for it because I feel like that'd be spoilery. The first half of the book, I would say, was my favorite, and it was really, really creepy. The first half of the book kind of is set in a little bit of an asylum setting, which to me, that's one of the creepiest settings something can be set in. It's just, when you think about those like past asylums and that kind of thing, it's super creepy. At least to me it is. So the first half of the book I thought was really creepy. Honestly, the creepiest we've hit so far in this series. I feel like the creep level continues to top itself in each book, which is really cool. And the first half of this book was no exception. It was super creepy. There was even more character development, which is great, and much of which was actually pretty surprising. There was some things I would learn about some of the characters that surprised me. Some past things that kind of came back to bite them, things like that. So it was really, really cool learning more about the characters and having some kind of twists in there, being like, whoa, I did not see that coming. So that was really cool as well. I didn't enjoy the second half of this book as much as the first half, because there wasn't as much of a paranormal focus to me. There was a lot of ghosty paranormal stuff in the first half of the book, and I felt like we tended to drift away from that a little bit in the second half. So for me personally, that just made it not as entertaining. So I kind of wish that would have been keeping with the paranormal kind of vibe through the rest of it as well. Not that it's not there at all, but it's just super creepy ghosty at the beginning, and then like towards further on in the story, I feel like it kind of pulled back from that, which was kind of disappointing to me. There was some sex in this one, especially more towards the end, the latter half of the book. There was some smut in there, which I personally don't really like to read. It's not comfortable for me to read that. I feel uncomfortable. I know some people really like that and everything. Personally, I felt a little bit uncomfortable with it. That kind of thing never really enhances the story for me. I'm just kind of like, I'd rather not know. I'm fine like if it's insinuated, but I'm just like, it was a little bit more graphic than I would have liked. So just FYI with that, if that's something that bothers you, that is in there. It's a little bit more graphic. So this is a young adult series, but make sure, you're not too young when you read it, because it is. There's some stuff in there that's kind of graphic, and I didn't really like having in there. I understood for the story the importance of it, but it kind of made me uncomfortable personally, so I didn't enjoy that part quite as much. Probably the highest creep factor in this series so far was this one. Like I said, each book to me gets creepier and creepier, which was great, especially since I was kind of disappointed with the creep factor in Diviners. It was nice to see the creep factor escalate as the story has gone on. I'm really looking forward to the last installment. I believe the last one is called The King of Crows, and it's a really cool looking cover as well, and I am very excited to read the last one. I'm excited to see how this all wraps up, because I feel like each book has its own story, but it's still a part of an overarching storyline, which is really cool. I love seeing that, because it's like each book has its own thing going for it, but it still has this overarching storyline that we are pushing towards in the last book, which is really neat. And I gave Before the Devil Breaks You 4.5 stars as well. So that's all the books that I read in August. I didn't get through quite as many as I was hoping, but each book in the Diviner series is pretty hefty, and so I'm actually kind of glad and surprised that I actually got through all of them in 1 month, because it was a lot. They were thick, but well worth the read, especially if you love paranormal. Highly recommend. What did you end up reading in August, and what did you think about them? Are there any books that I mentioned today that you have read? Have you read the Diviner series, or have you read Crossroads? What did you think about it? Let me know down below. On this side of the screen over here is my logo. If you click on that, you can subscribe to my channel and follow me on my book journey. On this side of the screen over here is another video if you want to watch another one right now. But thank you so much for watching. You rock, and don't forget to keep reading. Bye!